This is the Storypunks podcast, the show where we talk about all the punks. Welcome back to season 3. I'm so excited to talk about steampunk, dieselpunk, cyberpunk, and all the other punks. It's been a minute since our last episodes because this is a seasonal show, so welcome back. It's been a really wild ride as far as the pandemic and so many other things, so please know that this season will be a little shorter. It won't truly be shorter, but it will span more than 1 year. So I will be doing a limited number of episodes in 2020. But thank you for being here. And for anyone listening not in real time, it will just flow like usual. You will just have the same number of episodes as a previous season. So that hopefully orients you to where we are in the Storypunks podcast. This is part 1 of 2. I have authors Al-Mohamed and Danielle Ackley-McPhail on the show today. They are steampunk writers, among many other things. Just wait for the bios. That's all I can say. As far as finding my tiny home and beginning homesteading life, that has not occurred. But I've made some really good headway. I've stayed in some tiny homes. I know it's for me, and that's all I've got there. As far as my writing, yes, I have moved forward with my series, and I am just more excited about them than ever. So that's really cool. I do have some roadblocks in my way, and a lot of it is because of coronavirus. There's different vendors that I've been trying to work with, etc., and I need to be able to roll out the stories or the books in a decent amount of time, one after another. So basically, I am on hold when it comes to the series discussed, but I will have some things for them shortly, and that's very exciting to see it coming together. And if you're ever interested in the status of my writing or just want to check it out, please go to cindygrigg.com, CINDYGRIGG.com. It's wonderful to have you here, and I'm sure you'll agree as we jump into this wonderful discussion of steampunk. Again, I have authors Al-Mohamed and Danielle Ackley-McPhail here with me today. I will begin with both of their bios, but please know that we started the interview with just Danielle and me, and then we have Day join us a little later. She just had a very tight schedule, and so when you hear me talking to just Danielle at first, it's not because I'm like boxing Day out, just so you know. And then you will hear her join us. So again, this is in 2 parts, and I'm so thrilled to share this with you. Here we go. Award-winning author and editor Danielle Ackley-McPhail has worked both sides of the publishing industry for longer than she cares to admit. In 2014, she joined forces with husband Mike McPhail and friend Greg Schauer to form her own publishing house, eSpec Books, at www.especbooks.com. Her published works include 6 novels: Yesterday's Dreams, Tomorrow's Memories, Today's Promise, The Halfling's Court, The Red Cap's Queen, and Baba Ali and the Clockwork Djinn, written with Al-Mohamed. She is also the author of the solo collections A Legacy of Stars, Consigned to the Sea, Flash in the Can, Transcendence, Between Darkness and Light, and Eternal Wanderings, the Nonfiction Writer's Guide, The Literary Handyman, and is the senior editor of the Badass Fairies anthology series, Gaslight and Grim, Side of Good, Side of Evil, After Punk, and In an Iron Cage. Her short stories are included in numerous other anthologies and collections. In addition to her literary acclaim, she crafts and sells original costume horns under the moniker The Horny Lady, and homemade flavor-infused candied ginger under the brand of Ginger Kick at literary conventions, on commission, and wholesale, and that sounds absolutely delicious, Danielle. Danielle lives in New Jersey with husband and fellow writer Mike McPhail and 3 extremely spoiled cats. To learn more about her work, visit www.sidhenaidar.com, and I'm going to spell that because it's Gaelic, SIDHENADAIRE.com. Day Al-Mohamed is an author, filmmaker, and disability advisor. She is co-author of the novel Baba Ali and the Clockwork Djinn, a steampunk fairy tale, editor of the anthology Trust and Treachery, and a regular host on Adobe Radio's Geek Girl Riot, with an audience of 80,000 plus listeners. Her stories have appeared in Fireside Fiction, Apex Magazine, and Grey Haven Comics, with her most recent novella, The Labyrinth's Archivist, published July 2019 from Falstaff Press. She is an active member of Women in Film and Video, a Docs in Progress Fellowship alumna, and a graduate of the VONA Voices Writing Workshop. In addition to fiction, she also works in comics and film. Day's short story, The Lesser Evil, was nominated for the WSFA Small Press Award for Best Short Fiction of 2015. However, she is most proud of being invited to teach a workshop on storytelling at the White House in February 2016. Yeah, I guess so. That's amazing. So, Danielle, it's so wonderful to have you on the show, and I love that you've co-authored Baba Ali and the Clockwork Djinn with Day Al-Mohamed. And I know that this has been such a group effort that you'll be able to, tell us about what this collaboration was like. Mm-hmm. Welcome onto the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
So how did the two of you meet or, get started together?
I do a lot of the East Coast conventions, and many of them are in Maryland, which is where Day lives. So she started out as a fan. And when I was starting to do, I did an anthology called Gaslight and Grimm, Steampunk Fairy Tales.
I've seen that around.
Oh, well, cool.
Yeah, I haven't read it yet, but yeah, I've seen it.
And so my story, I wanted to be about Alibaba and the 40 Thieves. And we started, I asked Day if she would be my cultural consultant, because I wanted to follow the storytelling conventions of that area. So she gave me a bunch of notes and everything, and we were going back and forth, and it just developed, and she ended up co-writing it with me.
That's actually a really cool story. I like that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So
we had a great time.
Yeah. Just another bid for being connected to readers, or readers being connected to authors. Very cool. So tell me more about your costuming that I saw on your site, if you'd like.
It's been a while. I have fun with stuff like that.
So cool.
I like doing odd twists and the unexpected. And I started out playing with the clay. So my first costume was the one-eyed, one-horned flying purple people eater. And it just kind of spiraled from there.
I wasn't expecting that. I was waiting for more, just because of some of the other stuff I've seen on your site. But it's a perfectly lovely place to start. Pretty funky.
It was fun. I did it without a pattern, and they had such a blast watching me in it that the tech crew created an extra award so that I have to get out on the stage and dance again.
That is pretty cool. You are very prolific. I couldn't believe all the books I saw on your site. So have you been doing this for a long time?
It's been about 18 years.
Okay.
And most of those are anthologies. So
yeah.
So a little piece of it is me.
That's a smart way to do it.
Yeah, well, it takes so long to put out novels that if you don't have something continually coming out, you get lost again.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I put a really hard effort to continually have different titles come out each year. I think my highest was 10 titles in 1 year.
That's booking it. Wow.
Most of them were anthologies. So, and it's neat because you get to, write to different themes, and you get to draw on all those other people's fan bases.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. It's like natural networking.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. Do you organize them, or do you more hear about them and submit something?
Both.
Yeah.
I love coming up with the ideas myself and making them happen and developing them. And I'm always game to play when someone else has something else going as well.
Yeah. Absolutely. So the first place I start out is to ask definitions. And this has been a through line throughout every interview on the show, practically. And it's just a really cool way to talk about what inspires us about different punk terms. And some people even have, boundaries. So what has steampunk been like for you as a term, and how do you define it?
For me, there's two different schools of steampunk. There's the very dark and gritty dystopic, and then there's the Age of Wonder style steampunk, and that's what I go for. I want to revel in the awe that comes out of creating something new and figuring out a way to make something happen, rather than fighting against the machine.
Well, that is so awesome. I've noticed that in a lot of the punk terms we talk about. I think about diesel punk in particular. You get really light and glittering, diesel punk, and then you get really dark, war-focused diesel punk. And I think we do get that in steampunk as well. And we get that in cyberpunk. Well, cyberpunk might be a little more leaning toward dark most of the time, in my opinion. But yeah. But that's a really important dynamic to kind of sort out as a creator or as someone looking for stuff to read. So that really helps people know what to expect. But is there anything else that you can tell new readers about when it comes to your work, or, different things you've published, your books? It could be a really high, because one thing the audience should know is that Danielle has a ton of books. So however you want to address this, go for it.
I don't like to be pigeonholed. And I actually have Day just texted through, and she said she's on her way now.
Oh, perfect. Okay, good.
Yeah, she got home late from training.
Okay, no problem at all.
For me, I like to play. I don't want to be stuck doing just one thing. So I started out writing for contests, and they would have a different theme each week. And so my challenge was to find the most unique and original way to meet that theme, to do the unexpected. And so whatever genre I'm writing, that's still the premise that I go under, even though that it's my own work at this point. I tell people that are submitting to my anthologies, this is the theme. Take the first 3 things, even the first 10 things that you think of, and just throw them out. Because that means everybody else has thought of them too. Come up with the unexpected, and then you're going to stand out.
I don't know why this is coming up for me. It's possible I will cut this, but I worked for someone who was just constantly saying, he was asking me for creative ideas. It was a marketing role. But then he would just say in meetings like, well, Cindy just has these ideas. It's just easy for her. She's just always having these ideas. And I was like, no, you realize that took time. That took a process of elimination. That took dopamine, dude, to generate through a lot of crappy ideas and get to the nugget, and then, analyze what the right idea is that hasn't been overdone. And I just think of that when you say what you said, because sometimes I think as creators, we get stuck, and we can't figure out why we're not coming up with other ideas. I think sometimes you just have to hang there longer. Well said.
I do a lot of brainstorming. Hi, Dave.
Dave, welcome. It's so good to see you.
Fantastic. How am I sounding?
That sounds really good.
Fantastic.
And how's the day been so far? I don't mean to just jump into the business. Yeah.
A little bit crazy. So Tuesday night is fencing. So
that's so cool. With the mask.
with a mask and everything, and it's kind of one of those like U.S. Nationals were in Columbus, Ohio, on July 2nd.
Now, do they do nationals? Do they split it into male, female, or is it just like, is it the women's nationals or the men's nationals?
Yeah, they host men's and women's, and then they have like the cadet and junior, like the 12-year-olds, the 14-year-olds, everybody else, and then they have veterans that are broken up into over 40, over 50, 60, and over 70.
Veterans at 40. I guess that's true of every sport, right?
Well, think about this. I'm 40. I do not need to go up against some 70-year-old. I will kill them, and they will kill me.
That is true.
I will kill them because they off the strip because they'll be obnoxious.
When I heard you say fencing, it just made my knees tingle because I've got knee problems, and I was like, "Oh, I should have done that when I was younger." Yeah,
I had to do it when I was younger. I already had knee problems.
That's where you guys come back into it now in the veteran circuit because everybody has knee problems then.
I was going to say, I think I want to be in the 70-year-old bracket, but
there we go. Hey, some of those ladies are like awful. I just like got my ass kicked by a 70-year-old woman.
Oh, I believe it.
About an hour ago, and it's like, oh yeah, that's Jimmy, and she's on the U.S. Veterans World Championship team. Kicked my ass. So, and you know, and this is where I go, yeah, but part of the reason I'm pushing so hard is actually at this last year's nationals, I came in 7th. So now I am 7th in the country in my age category.
Oh my goodness, that's the coolest.
I know. I feel kind of like, look at me. I'm kind of badass. I didn't look so badass when you saw me like limping up the stairs to get up here.
No one has to see that or know that, though.
Only Gamma.
Do you write? Do you write about fencing? Have you ever done that?
I have not yet, but now I'm going to have
super
to.
Cool. Yeah, that's so fascinating. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, so Dave, what is your definition of steampunk, or how what has it meant to you, or what do you want to speak to when it comes to the term itself?
Sure. I think one of the toughest things about steampunk, at least how I foresee it, is it doesn't necessarily meet some of the basic definitions the way we define punk. Punk has always been like a rebellious sort of a movement in some ways, and I guess the way I've always looked at steampunk is, I guess I always like to think of it as retrofuturism. You know, the way science fiction looks at the future, and there's this love affair with technology in many ways. I kind of go, steampunk is a historical time period, but it also has that same kind of love affair with technology. So I guess that would be the way I think about steampunk, is a little bit of that whole. It's this dawning age of science, and there's still that excitement about boundaries we haven't crossed yet. You know, that whole frontiers sort of an element.
Oh, that is so well said. Thank you. I love that you hit on the aesthetic part, because honestly, I think that's where a lot of people come into steampunk, but I know that your definition had a lot more than that. But it just seems like recently I haven't heard a lot that brought that out. So that was really, really cool to hear, and something I really related to. So thank you. And for anyone totally new to your workday, what can you tell them as far as what to expect? Is there a through line, or do you want to just give an overview of what you've written so far? You can address this in any way for anyone who's just totally new to you.
Oh, I think the tough part is I am still discovering my way, if that makes any sense.
Totally.
I got a chance to write Middle Eastern steampunk with Daddy. Yay! And just so to make it very clear, this is all her fault. It started as her idea, and then she kind of sucked me into it.
I heard that you were a super fan, and then is that the right story, or do you want to tell it differently?
Hey, I just said a fan.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm a stan, man. That's what it is. But a lot of my stuff previously has been a little more science fiction-y, or it was very heavily into alternate history. I think I have more adult alternate history publications than anything else. And then more recently, I've been playing a lot more with YA and middle grade in particular. So
Very cool. Okay, well, the two of you, as mentioned, have co-written Baba Ali and the Clockwork Djinn. So when you were going through this process, people are always really fascinated by how teams get work done and how the creative team in particular worked in this case. So did you basically have different roles? Did you divvy it up by chapters, or did you seriously sit in the same room and write it together, or how did you go about it?
This is where the chaos comes in. I'm not just a pantser, I'm a non-linear pantser.
Nice.
So we would get the concepts of elements that we wanted to include. We would just write all over the place. And one of us would get an idea for a section and write it out and then send it to the other person. And we would adjust and add our little bit to it. And we also had an alpha reader reading at the same time as we were writing. So once we both did it, then we would send it to her and she would say what parts didn't make sense and where we might have gotten something wrong and tweaked it a little bit. And then we just wove it all together. That's really cool. Day, do you have anything to add to that?
Not that comes to mind. I think that was a lot of it was back and forth. Was someone would take that first draft, the next person would kind of edit and then add another 2,000 words, and it would go back. The other person would do another smoothing and then edit the 2,000 and add their own. And it was usually about 2,000 or 3,000 words each time, I think. Was about it. And then every so often someone would go back and I'll admit I'm a huge research freak, and I'd be like, oh, this, and start putting other into mind. I think it's part of the reason I have a section on the website called Book Secrets, and it actually has about a dozen separate little posts about things in the novel and where they came from and what are some of the actual histories behind them. So the stuff in there is real.
Yeah, so everyone needs to check that out.
That was the best part, is that we would both come up with these awesome ideas and she would come up with the actual hard facts that tied it in with that time period.
Very cool. Well, that leads me right into my curiosity about how you came to combine Djinn. Now, is the plural Djinns or Djinn? I don't know. But Djinns? Djinn?
I've just heard it Djinn.
For the plural? Okay.
And a singular would be a Ginny.
Oh, okay, like a genie. Genie, but that's the wrong way to say it. Yeah, Ginny. Yeah. Okay, cool. So Djinn is the plural. Okay, I didn't know that. So anyway, what is it about Djinns? I just did it wrong. What is it about Djinn that made you want to combine it with Clockwork? And what was the inspiration for that core idea?
Well, like I mentioned, this was originally supposed to be for Gaslight and Grimm, which was a collection of steampunk fairy tales. And so the core concept was always Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves. But when you're talking fairy tales, you work in that magical element. And one of the predominant magical aspects of that region are the Djinn and the ghouls and other beings in that family group. So it kind of, what ended up happening is we kind of morphed Aladdin with Ali Baba.
Okay, so there was a retelling, but if you had to anchor it back to anything, it would be Aladdin specifically.
Maybe
or not. So
I actually would say it actually is stronger in Ali Baba, and this is the one reason why is and this is why, like I said, I love the history part. Is if you go back to the original source material, Ali Baba was not really the brightest of guys, and it was his servant girl Morgiana who actually is the one who saved him, the one who actually was wise to the fact, this thief is trying to take stuff. And so in many ways we swapped out Morgiana and put the genie and even named her after the character. But it's like, that is, how about this? One of the older versions calls it as, it refers to the story as Clever Morgiana. So it's not Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves. It actually is a woman's story. And I think we kind of, in many ways, embraced part of that and brought back the fact that part of this is a woman's story.
That's awesome. So did you go through just version after version?
We did call up the original. I don't know that we went through multiple versions, because that would be It would have taken us forever just to do that.
Well, that's exactly why I asked, because just speaking, from a creator perspective, how do you go about choosing which version to really look at? And if you read 15 versions, does it bog your own creativity down? Or I was just curious about that.
We looked for a few and we pulled out the elements that were consistent.
Right. And I think that was the key thing, was looking at what are the elements, the posts that we want that are close enough to what we're looking for. And that maintains, that connected to the older structure. But beyond that, it's like, go, be creative.
Okay, Storypunks, this is actually the perfect place for us to break. And Day pretty much gave us permission to go be creative. So I think we should all do that. We should all run with that. And tune in for International Steampunk Day. That is coming up June 14th. And I will remind you of this at the end of the next episode since it's a little bit closer. But be sure to search for that online. You will find lots of cool stuff. I wish you the best with everything you're working on. Even if you're just inching along, don't give up on your projects. As I mentioned, I will have the next episode for you next week. Until then, take care.